Hello and welcome to Writing with Steve with me, Steve Evans. Today we're analysing the poem A Poison Tree by William Blake. This is one of a number of texts that we're analysing. If you haven't seen them, please check them out and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I have the poem here with me, so let's go through it. I was angry with my friend. I told my wrath did end. I was angry with my foe, I told it not, my wrath did grow. And I watered it in fears, night and morning with my tears, and I sunned it with smiles, and with soft deceitful wiles. And it grew both day and night, till it bore an apple bright, and my foe beheld it shine, and he knew that it was mine. And into my garden stole, when the night had veiled the pole. In the morning glad I see my foe outstretched beneath the tree. This is a deceptively simple poem. It's told from the point of view of the speaker. It uses I, and it tells the story of the speaker who becomes obsessed with a hatred of his perceived enemy, his foe, and he allows this hatred, this anger to build up and to build up until it results in tragedy, in the destruction of his enemy, and at the same time the self-destruction of the speaker. So there seems to be a moral message to this, but let's explore that later. So let's start unpacking this poem. So what's clear in this is Blake's use of an extended metaphor. The extended metaphor being the tree, which plays a significant part in the poem. As the speaker's anger builds, his resentment builds, so does the tree grow. So looking at the poem, we see how the poison tree is nurtured. So in the second stanza, Blake tells us how this poison tree grows. It's watered by the speaker's fears and also by his tears, probably tears of anger or angst or anxiety and resentment at this foe. But it's also sunned with smiles, and it looks like these smiles are deceitful smiles, and this is quite ambiguous, so we don't know whether the sunned smiles and the deceitful wiles are the speaker keeping this anger and resentment away from his friends as well as his enemy, so nobody knows he's carrying this resentment. And of course this makes the poison tree, the anger, the will to harm his foe, grow bigger and bigger. And we know this anger and resentment becomes an obsession. See how the poet presents that in the second stanza. He uses a series of opposites, what we call antithesis. So looking at the second stanza, we have the opposites night and morning, watered and sunned, smiles and tears. So it suggests that this man is completely obsessed 24/7, and that the revenge is pervading every moment of his life. Stanza 3 carries this on. It says that the tree grew both day and night until it bears, it grows this bright apple that's plain for all to see, including his foe. And it's very attractive. It's almost like a jewel, a bauble that the enemy wants to possess. He wants to possess it so badly that he steals into the speaker's garden at night time. But this is invited, this is a trap, because the speaker knows this is what he's going to do. So in the 4th stanza, we read that his enemy stole into the garden. So the word stole is a pun. It plays on the word steal as well as the word stole, meaning to sneak and stealthily enter the garden. He sneaks in the dark of night when the North Star, which is the pole star Blake refers to in this poem, is veiled by the clouds, by the darkness. And under the cover of darkness, and we assume, although it's never explicitly stated, that the foe has bitten of the apple. It's poisoned fruit because it's come from a poison tree, and he dies. At the end of the poem, the speaker comes to find that the foe is outstretched, he's dead beneath the tree. So let's look at a couple of interesting points from this poem. Let's look at symbolism and the 2 important symbols here. The first is the apple and what that may represent. Well, we know that the apple is temptation. It acts as a trap for the enemy. It entices him to steal it and also to bite it. It also has religious connotations. It reminds us of the forbidden fruit in the book of Genesis in the Bible, the fruit that Adam and Eve were forbidden to eat, and which in the story Eve is tempted to eat through the persuasion of a serpent who we generally associate with the devil and evil. So by making this suggestion and referencing this story from the Bible, we have an idea of sin and sinfulness. Not just the foe's sin by stealing, but also the speaker's sin by setting a trap, almost persuading his foe to take the apple and bite the poison fruit. So in effect, the speaker is also a sinner. The use of the word garden, where the poem is set, also has connotations of the Bible, and from falling from a state of innocence we fall into a state of sin. The second important symbol is the pole star. So the pole star, the North Star, is a very bright star. Traditionally it was used for navigation and finding one's direction. So the fact that in the poem the pole star is no longer visible could suggest that the speaker has lost all sense of moral direction. He's lost his moral compass. He is morally and spiritually lost. Yet despite this, the ending of the poem is ambiguous. We read that the speaker is glad to find his enemy dead. So despite the poem being confessional, he's disclosing how he planned and was successful in murdering a man. There is no tone of regret or remorse. That is left for the reader to infer. The reader has clues that the poet presents to us. We have the apple representing sin and temptation. We know of the self-destructive nature of the speaker's act because he too has lost his moral compass, his sense of moral direction. We understand this. The speaker doesn't. The speaker doesn't understand that there's been two deaths in this poem. There's been the literal death of the enemy, but there's also been the figurative, the spiritual and moral death of the speaker. The speaker doesn't realise this, the readers realise this, so the poem is using irony to reinforce this message. This poem, thematically, and because of the speaker's attitude to murder, it links really well with Simon Armitage's poem Hitcher. That too features a speaker who is confessing to a murder. So if you do have an opportunity, read Simon Armitage's poem and compare it to A Poison Tree. One other interesting aspect to this poem is that the speaker is contemplating murder. He doesn't actually commit a murder. He imagines the death of his enemy. Thus we have the running metaphor, the extended metaphor, that this is all happening in his mind. And look what it's doing to him. It makes him obsessive. It makes him focused on nothing solely but negative feelings. It's harming his mental state of health. And it raises some very interesting questions. First of all, it looks at how keeping negative thoughts and feelings can be a very self-destructive process. Blake also raises an interesting question. Isn't considering and contemplating the death of someone else just as wicked and evil as actually committing the murder? So Blake is emphasising the self-destructive nature of jealousy and hatred and envy. Does he offer a solution? Well, the solution we find not at the end of the poem, unlike most poems, but at the beginning. It's simply to speak with somebody. If you have issues, if you have a problem, share that problem. Speak openly. Don't keep it to yourself. Share the problem. Perhaps discuss it with a friend, a confidant, someone you can trust. Or speak openly with the person who is making you feel this way. Open into a dialogue with them. Even speak to the person that is causing you to feel this way. And even if you can't reconcile your differences, speaking openly will at least clear the air and improve your mental health. So Blake is sending this message, and because it's such an important, profound message, he wants to convey it as simply as possible. And this is reflected in the structure of the poem he chooses. He conveys the message very economically in just 4 stanzas, each stanza containing 4 lines, a quatrain. In each stanza we have a pair of rhyming couplets. The fact that the couplets rhyme emphasises the message and makes it memorable, because this message is so important. Blake wants us to learn it by heart, and it lends to the poem a nursery rhyme quality. A nursery rhyme is a very appropriate form for this message. Parents often use nursery rhymes as well as folk stories to warn children about human nature and the big bad world outside. And notice the very simple lexis or vocabulary that Blake uses to tell a very profound story. Friend, end, foe, grow, smiles, wiles, shine, mine. Notice that many of the words are monosyllabic, which again lends a simplicity to the poem and makes it able to be understood by a wide range of people. Blake was a spiritual man. He was deeply moral, but he didn't believe in organised religion. But he was a great humanist and felt strongly about injustice and the suffering of the poor, especially children, who were often cruelly treated and exploited. They were sent to work in dangerous jobs. And another of Blake's famous poems concerns a child chimney sweep. And chimney sweeping was a dangerous and deathly trade. William Blake was by profession an artist. He was an engraver, and he produced these beautiful drawings. The poems often illustrated his paintings, his sketches, and not the other way round. So you can see here the poem, A Poison Tree, illustrated. That came first. It was followed then by the poem. A Poison Tree is one of a collection of poems from a book called Songs of Innocence and Experience. And in this collection, Blake uses his poems quite often to deliver many moral messages and criticisms of the society he lived in. He champions the cause of the poor and downtrodden. So A Poison Tree is very much positioned as a poem of moral instruction and teaching us life lessons. I hope you found this poetry analysis helpful. Don't forget to check out our other videos which contain similar analysis. If you like this video, please don't forget to hit the like button and to subscribe. Until next time, from Carol and me, write well.